What's cracking, guys? Bateslinger Blair here. I'm coming at you with a video I've been meaning to make for a little bit now, and that is a recap of Char and I's fall tournament season. We're both freshmen here at the University of Montevallo. You see around me here, we got purple and yellow all around. Behind my computer here, Montevallo is a special school for fishing. You know, our school is actually pretty small, which I like. You can navigate it really easily. And, as a school that's got a major #1 nationally ranked fishing team, you really, to me, honestly, I wouldn't have expected that Montevallo would be the one. But we've got such a well-ran program here that it just makes sense. It makes sense now that I've been here for a fall. I'm going to go over what our tournaments were this year so far throughout the fall, how we ended up finishing for our team out of all the teams on our team. And we're going to just talk about the fishing team a little bit. You guys can learn a little bit about it. But I'm sure there's some people out there that are interested about it. If nothing else, you'll get to learn a lot more about college fishing and a little bit about how we did this season. It was a lot of fun taking our knowledge as Minnesotans and applying it to these southern bodies of water, learning while we're at it, and being able to actually find a little bit of success along the way. So let's get into it, guys. Stay tuned. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. So I'm going to start off just giving you guys a little bit of history on who I am, because, for anybody that's new, why should you listen to me on this unless you're just interested in college fishing, which I think is pretty interesting to look back through this stuff. But I'm also going to just let you know a little bit about how we have worked to overcome some of these obstacles of southern fishing and a little bit of what I've learned so far along the way. There's a lot yet to learn, but I've got some juicy details for you guys and some statistics from how our season's gone so far. So I'm Blair Erickson, if you guys don't already know that. I come from central Minnesota. I've worked several jobs in bait shops up in Minnesota, and I actually fished in high school bass fishing tournaments for the last 5 years before I came down here to Montevallo fishing in college. It was a big jump for me, not only leaving family, but then also trying to tackle this idea of these different bass that get pressure all year round. They don't have ice over them. Ice is like a foreign concept down here. It's so funny. Cold weather, the bass, what I've learned since I've been down here is the bass are just like southern people. They don't like the cold. So if you come up to tournament morning and you're about to blast off and it's 32 degrees outside, plan for it to be tough fishing, because that's how it seemed to be this fall. Anytime that we were fishing and it was cold, it was tough. It was very tough. And honestly, coming in with a limit was a feat in itself, it seemed like sometimes. Getting into how our tournaments went, our first tournament was in September. It was actually a day after my birthday. We went to Watts Bar Lake. This was our first tournament we ever tried to tackle, and we put a little bit of extra time into it. We were sent to this tournament, so our school, through the program, if you're sent to a tournament, we get a lot of our financial expenses covered. But for this tournament, we didn't just take what we were given by the school. We went a weekend before, which was outside of what we were being sent for, and we did a little bit of pre-fishing on our own cash, just so that we could better understand the lake and try to give ourselves that head start coming into some college southern fishing. So we got to Watts Bar, and instantly it was tough. I mean, our first day there, we caught maybe 8 fish, and we knew it was going to be a tough derby. It was actually still hot outside, but those fish, they just were in a funk. Our second day of pre-fishing that weekend, we found a little something special, thought we had something going, and we came back the next weekend, which was the weekend of the tournament, and our first day of pre-fishing for that weekend, we checked our spot that we had found fish at. They were still there, so we were feeling pretty good. Second day of pre-fishing, we checked some more stuff out, tried to figure out some plan B stuff, but it really just wasn't working out. Watts Bar is a beautiful lake. There's tons of different areas to fish on it. It's known for having a little bit of grass, which is what me and Char really looked for. Coming from Minnesota, we're grass fishermen, so why wouldn't we go look for that? We just targeted grass mostly if we could find it. Super simple was the way we went with it. Just flipping around Senkos, trying to catch cruising bass in the areas that we targeted. But tournament day came around, and guess what there was? 32 degrees in the morning, a fog delay, and a big cold front. We learned very quickly that these bass hate the cold. And, you always hear it up north. If you're watching from up north, we just can't even comprehend it until you get down here and do it yourself. It does not make sense. But these bass hate the cold. They won't even open their mouth. It's like lockjaw on another level. You could be fishing a stretch that there's fish, and where up north we'd be able to still pick one off here and there. It's nothing. You can't get these fish to bite. So it takes a lot of decision-making skills to be able to turn one of those tough days into a good day. So our Watts Bar tournament, I'm not going to recap all our tournaments this deeply, but because this was our first one, it was pretty special for us. Our Watts Bar tournament was won with 11 pounds, not by us, and we ended up weighing in one fish for 2 pounds, 2.75 pounds, 2 3/4 pounds, which was really solid fish for that tournament. We only weighed in one, but the area we were fishing had several more that size we had caught pre-fishing, and honestly, I think we set ourselves up very good for having a potential at winning that tournament. But as tournament fishing goes, you can't control the fish, so it didn't work out that day, but it was definitely fun to get into the swing of things and set ourselves up well to where we felt confident on a southern body of water, our first tournament into college fishing. That was pretty awesome. So that was our first tournament of the fall, Watts Bar. Really cool lake, very beautiful, all sorts of stuff to fish there. Our next tournament was up in Illinois. So we go from down in the southeast to driving 13 hours north up to Illinois, and there is literally nothing there except for 2 lakes that we fished. And there were 2 lakes that were being held with tournaments by one of the local college teams. Let me let you guys in also on how the point system works for college. That's something important to know. That's why we're fishing these tournaments. Montevallo, I think, does a better job than any other team at getting guys out on the water for these different tournaments and making sure we have numbers at them to be able to competitively compete and finish at the top ranks every single tournament. For these tournaments in the fall, besides a couple of them that me and Char weren't sent to, as we're just kind of fresh and our coach and teammates are kind of seeing how we fish and how well we can do compared to some other anglers, we didn't get sent to the big tournaments, which are 1,000-point tournaments in the fall, but we did get sent to many of the smaller tournaments, which are 100-point tournaments. So these 100-point tournaments, they're smaller tournaments, usually anywhere from like 19 to maybe 78, 80 boats was the most that we had. But they're very important because 100 points at a time adds up. And when you're in the School of the Year race, which is what we're in right now, you guys will learn more about that as we go. But the college fishing has a School of the Year race through Collegiate Bass that all of these nationally ranked teams throughout the nation, you got teams from pretty much anywhere you want to fish. These college teams are competing for School of the Year. Last year, Montevallo was able to take it home before me and Char actually came down. That was their first nationally ranked title for the school ever, and we're trying to do a repeat this year and get that School of the Year title again. We're off to a good start, but that's just a little bit about the point system. Like I said, small tournaments are 100 points. The bigger ones, which are through MLF or Bassmaster, some of those more well-known companies, those ones are the big ones, and then all of these smaller ones are school ran, so they're usually the colleges that are in those areas. They have a little bit of an advantage over the other people coming, but they host other colleges so that they can get 6 different colleges fishing that tournament. If you have 6 or more colleges fishing that tournament, then that can count towards the School of the Year race. So that's a little bit about that. Hopefully that didn't bore you to death, but that helps you better understand why we're doing this, why it's so important for us to fish these tournaments and place high in them, besides just, bragging rights and feeling good about ourselves. So our next tournament, as I was saying, was in Illinois. We actually had a double back-to-back tournament. One was on Lake Vandalia, which you guys don't have to know. Honestly, I recommend you never fish there. But Lake Vandalia is a small puddle up in Illinois. It's got some big bass in it, but they are very hard to catch. Probably the toughest lake I've ever fished, honestly, to date. Even after all the tournaments I fished still, it's a tough lake. I wouldn't recommend going back there. But with that tournament, we pretty much just kept it easy and fished docks with Senkos, and we were very methodical about it, casting them under these docks, letting them sit for seconds before moving it, and you just had to be real slow. These fish did not want to just come over and smoke your bait as soon as it lands in the water or as it's falling. They weren't active at all like that. It was almost more so that they're in the area, you skip in there, you probably spook them a little bit unless you get a lucky one, and you just have to let it sit in their area until they kind of get comfortable and pull it in front of their face. After a little bit of that, sometimes you got lucky and caught one, but it was tough to even get a bite in that tournament. Char and I ended up weighing in 2 fish, and we caught one of them within 5 minutes left of the tournament, and we almost did the best for Montevallo in that tournament. One of our buddies, Jordan and Davion, they were able to pull off a 8th place finish, I believe it was. So we got a top 10 there, and that was with 8 pounds. So, I mean, it was definitely a tough tournament. Our next tournament was the next day on Stephen Forbes Lake, which was only about 40 minutes away from Vandalia. Pretty interesting lake. This one looked a lot more like a lake in Minnesota. Really clear water. Vandalia was kind of like that agricultural pesticide looking water. Looked like death, but sometimes big ones do like that water. Stephen Forbes was a lot clearer, and there was a lot of good looking stuff, a lot of brush on the shoreline that you could flip with a brush hog or something like that. But me and Char just kept it simple again, and we found a really good stretch that had fish on it in pre-fishing, pulled up to it right away in the morning of the tournament, skipped our Senkos around, and ended up catching 3 real quick. One that was a line burner, which unfortunately was too small by the end of the day. It lost about a 1/4 inch, and we had to throw that one back. But me and Char were fortunate to actually get the best place for Montevallo in that tournament, and that was a 9th place finish. So at this point, we have 1 top 10. That was our first top 10 ever in a college tournament, in our 3rd tournament ever fished. And we had 3 tournaments down. We don't really feel like we're that confident that we can just go anywhere and catch fish yet by any means. Heck, I still am not fully confident in that, but we're starting to get some wind behind our sails and starting to build a little bit of momentum for ourselves. Our finishes were increasing every single time, so that's always good when you see that forward progress. Our next tournament on Lake Ouachita in Arkansas, it's a couple weeks after. Another cooler week, and this was, I don't know, some people I think call them like highland reservoirs. This is one of those little spotted bass fisheries where you catch a largemouth and that sucker's a kicker. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's 2 pounds or bigger. That's a big fish, because pretty much everything you catch is a small spotted bass, which for us, we were catching a lot of 12-inch spotted bass, which are, maybe pounders. But this tournament, we really didn't find a whole lot pre-fishing. We caught a lot of fish, but there wasn't anything that was like a significant pattern to where we really felt like we could catch some bigger fish. Char did catch 1 big one pre-fishing, casting a buzzbait up next to a laydown, reeled it right over, and poof, he hooked into it and caught it. It was probably 3 1/4 or 3.5 pounds. Really solid largemouth. I mean, one of those that's a stud out there for sure. But that tournament, we ended up finishing in, I want to say it was 11th place, somewhere in that ballpark, just past 10th place. We ended up getting 6.90 pounds, and that was of spotted bass. We found a little something out in the tournament around some docks, and we're able to finish out our first college limit ever. 4 tournaments into the tournament season of us fishing this fall, we got our first college limit ever. So we had now gotten our first top 10 and our first college limit. So these are milestones for us. Pretty cool to recap and talk about this stuff. Even though we didn't obviously do that great in that tournament, it was still an awesome time, and we're learning a ton through all of this. Our next tournament, definitely the most memorable of this season so far. This fall season, we went up north to Wisconsin, which I've actually never even bass fished in Wisconsin before, but Char and I were feeling good about it. This tournament was held in October. I believe it was the 23rd. And the way I saw it, I was thinking about Minnesota, and 2 weeks prior in Minnesota, it's quite a bit colder. I mean, I'd say this area that we were in the Madison area of Wisconsin, is 2 weeks behind Minnesota weather-wise. So you guys can kind of get a little bit of like what I was thinking planning this tournament out. So I was trying to think of how I could fish for these bass in Wisconsin that would be like 2 weeks prior in Minnesota. So late fall is always a great time to throw the main fall presentations. Swim baits, blade baits, a big jig, Ned rig is always good in the fall, anything like that. So we went up to Wisconsin with that in mind. We just focused on the fall pattern and really dialed in a few areas. We were able to find some really good stuff pre-fishing, and fortunately we had one day of pre-fishing, and in about the first 3 hours we were feeling pretty solid about it. We caught some really nice fish, and I actually hooked into a giant sturgeon within 3.5 hours of pre-fishing, and that thing took me for a ride. I didn't have it on camera, didn't have the GoPro in the boat. It was a giant. I measured it later, how much it would have been, and it was about 60 inches long. Absolute tank. I've always wanted to catch one of those and was not expecting it. But this fish took me for a ride. I spent over 3 hours fighting it, and on a bass rod, it was pretty unreal. One of our other teammates was able to watch me fight it in too, so that was pretty epic, I gotta say. Our pre-fishing for this tournament was awesome, and even though we lost quite a bit of pre-fishing time, I'm sure there's some people that are like, holy cow, why did you keep that on for 3 hours? I'd never caught one before. It was pretty special, so I didn't think it would take that long, but it did end up taking that long. The good thing is that our tournament came around the next day, and we got back to our northern roots. Sorry about that. GoPro died for a second there, but me and Char were able to put together a very solid bag on tournament day. Getting back to our northern roots, we put most of the fish in the boat with Alabama rig and a blade bait. Blade bait is something very special that I've fished for a long time, and it's kind of a little secret, not gonna lie. I'm not afraid to share it because I did post the video, which was an awesome video, by the way. If you guys want to go check it out, I've got all my tournaments on film, so those are all on YouTube here. But that blade bait really sealed the deal for us. Char was able to catch 2 big ones, one on an Alabama rig and one on the Untamed Tackle Ace jig. They came out with that about a year ago, and thing catches them. It's an awesome jig. It catches all sorts of sizes, and it'll get it done with the big ones too. When they want that smaller presentation, it's a great jig for that. I was able to catch them on the blade bait and really cycle through a lot of bites, and that eventually turned into catching some big ones after catching a bunch of smaller mid-range size fish, which, you know, a lot of these fish actually that we were catching, if we caught them down south, we would be hyped. I mean, a 2-pounder is a giant for us down south so far. I mean, this fall, and I think it's just fall fishing in general, it's tough down south. You can catch the big ones. There's big ones there, obviously. But if you're just trying to get a well-rounded limit, 2-pounders, you're onto a little bit of a bag going with that. If you can get a couple kickers with that, you got a chance in these fall derbies. But me and Char were able to seal the deal. We got 17.35 pounds, I think. And we actually beat second place by 2 pounds exactly, so that was pretty funny. It was just nice to finally get back up to our northern roots, show the guys on the team that we came from up north. We're not afraid to put a little smack down up north. I think it showed for sure. We were able to take home first and head back to Montevallo with our heads up high and feeling good. So our momentum got to the peak very quickly, I would say, in our fall season. Getting our first college win that fast is nothing to look at, and I don't think I'm anything special for that, but it's definitely nice to get that pressure off, to get that first one, so then we can start working on the second one. Fishing has always taught me to be humble. It's definitely good to enjoy the highs while they're there, but you gotta understand that next tournament might be your worst tournament ever. So we finished that one up, celebrated a little bit, felt good, but we got right back to it and got back to concentration mode. Didn't think anything of it for our next tournament and just started focusing on dialing in the next lake and working towards doing it again. So our next tournament, which actually wasn't with Charlie, myself and one of our other teammates, Brennan Berglund, we fished Logan Martin. It's about an hour away from Montevallo, and it's part of the Coosa River too. So if you guys have heard about that, it's known for having really giant spotted bass, which I'm sure they're in Logan Martin, but the way it was fishing, if you were catching 2-pounders, if you came in with 10 pounds, you would do really good in the tournament, which we were very fortunate to be able to put together a pattern and find a very special spot. We started the day out just fishing jerkbaits, catching these smaller spotted bass, and that's a really good way to catch them, by the way, in the fall, is just a jerkbait, fishing shallow cover, whether it's standing timber like on Lake Ouachita. There was a lot of trees everywhere standing up, casting in those. On Logan Martin, we were just fishing around docks and some rock if we found it. It's a pretty wide open lake, and we were able to get a decent limit in the morning. Later on, the blade bait came back into play and a swim bait, just typical fall fishing, and we were able to really cycle through some fish and cull out our fish to finish up with a bag that was 10.25 pounds. So for how pre-fishing went for us, we were stoked to get that, and we ended up finishing 7th place. So that was pretty awesome. Brennan and I also fished a tournament on Wheeler Lake in Alabama as well earlier in the fall, which we definitely learned a lot from that tournament. But we were just, I'd say, a day of pre-fishing away from really figuring out what we needed to do, and we only came in with one keeper that day. So we did have tougher tournaments throughout the fall. In fact, Charlie and I's last tournament of the fall in Missouri, I didn't say misery, but it was a little bit of misery the tournament day. But Lake of the Ozarks, who would have thought? Such an amazing fishery. The biggest thing we learned from there is that there's an insane amount of docks everywhere, tons of different creeks to go up into, and we fished a ton of them. Pre-fishing, I was able to stick a really solid, almost 5-pounder, and we found a really good stretch. We thought we'd be able to catch some really solid fish off of pre-fishing. Our second day of pre-fishing, which was our last one, we checked that area out again, and it was not consistent. It was definitely a lot tougher that day. So we didn't really know what to think coming into the tournament. We fished a lot of different areas, tried a ton of different stuff, and never could really get back onto a little pattern or an area that seemed to have those better sized fish in it. Ended up fishing the tournament, and I lost one on a swim bait that definitely could have been a keeper. Wouldn't have helped us really at all in that tournament, though. Fortunately, our good buddies from up north also, Easton and Nick, were able to pull off the dub at that tournament, so we got another 100 points on our side for that. It was pretty awesome watching them win their first college tournament too. 2 northern teams were able to get their first college win this past fall. So that's a recap, pretty solid recap on how our fall went. If you guys are going to take anything away from this video that's more fishing related than just statistics, is that when you come down south, you have to slow down and you have to be a little bit more rational about how you fish for these bass. I brought a lot of combos down, over 20 rod and reel combos down. I've been fortunate to get, over the time that I've been bass fishing, I only used probably 6 or 7 of them very regularly this fall. So there's really just a select few things that seem to be fish catchers above all else. You know, a Senko. Everywhere it works. If you guys can't catch fish, throw a Senko. That's probably the best advice I got for you. Senko saved us in a couple of our tournaments for sure this fall. And, you know, cold weather, bass don't like it. We're going to learn a lot more as things go on. I don't really want to say other tips or advice because really, who am I to know anything about southern fishing? I still got a lot to learn. So I'm going to take a little bit more time before I actually try giving you guys real solid, critical advice on these bass. Take it for what it's worth. I enjoy making these videos. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you made it to the end, which I think would be a miracle, except for some of my closer subscribers. Appreciate you guys. You know, keep on keeping on. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys look forward to the next ones. I'll start doing some more of these recap videos, and of course the tournament videos coming up. As we get further and further with this channel, I might start doing how-tos, so if you guys are interested in those, definitely comment down below any ideas or suggestions you want to hear. It doesn't just have to be bass fishing, it can be basic fishing knowledge too. A lot of my subscribers from up north know that I really do enjoy ice fishing, and I feel like I'm very knowledgeable in ice fishing, so if you guys have any questions on that, shoot them at me. I'll answer them in the comments. But as for bass fishing, give me some suggestions. Maybe we'll do some of them. Appreciate you guys watching, like I said, and we'll see you in the next one.